Hi, it's Kristen, and these are the 30 books I want to read before I'm 30. I recently turned 29 this month, and so that means I have a year until I'm 30. That's how time and maths works. And I've always seen like 30 before 30 lists, whether it's like 30 things you want to do before you're 30, 30 things you want to see before you're 30, and obviously 30 books you want to read before you're 30. And I sort of went back and forth on whether I was gonna like do a post or a video around this subject. And then I saw Emily, who I went to Croatia with last year on a Trova trip, and we shared a room for the whole week. And she recently turned 29 as well, and she posted a 30 before 30 list. And so I was like, okay, I'm gonna do one too. So I've got 30 books here that I do want to read by this time next year. I've sort of sorted them into rough categories, and I'm just gonna go through them and explain like what they are and my sort of vague reasoning for wanting to read them sooner rather than later. So let's do non-fiction first. So first up, I have The Guilty Feminist by Deborah Frances-White. This is based on a podcast called The Guilty Feminist, which Deborah Frances-White is the host of. And they just talk about feminist issues. They have guests on, comedians. Deborah Frances-White is a comedian. Yeah, I was a fan of the podcast, so I picked this up when it came out. This edition is even signed, and I've picked it up a couple of times going, I'm going to read it now. And I've even started it and then just never got around to finishing it. So I need to, because there's been so many more episodes of the podcast since this came out like a few years ago now. So I need to get to it. Then following on the feminist theme, most of these are feminist non-fiction. We have Everyday Sexism by Laura Bates. This again came out years ago. I asked for it for a birthday or Christmas or something, and my mum got it for me as a present, and then I've just never got around to reading it. And Laura Bates has since come out with like 2 more books. So this is really just, I need to get to it because I've had it on my TBR for a long time. I think my thing is, I know that this is gonna like frustrate me and anger me and make me feel like righteous feminist rage, which I have to be in a certain mood for because otherwise it's just depressing. But yes, I have that one. Then I have Eat, Sweat, Play by Anna Kessel. This one is about like women in sports, and yeah, that's pretty much all I know. I heard about it, it really interested me. I heard about this when I was like getting into running and like training and exercising more, which I sort of fell out of and then have recently got back into again. And so I really want to pick this one up. Again, I asked for this for like a birthday or Christmas or something, and my brother got it for me, and I've yet to read it. And this does feel like one that now might be a bit dated because since this came out and since I've got it, we had like the Lionesses at the Euros, which was amazing, and then like they did well at the Women's World Cup, and I've just not got round to it. And so I feel like, yeah, I need to read this before it's too dated and because it's been on my TBR for a long time. But yes, got that. And then we have The Five by Hallie Rubenhold. This is one I started on audio and wasn't really clicking with, so I bought it physically. This is about the women who were the victims of Jack the Ripper, but is really focusing on their lives, not Jack the Ripper. This is the untold lives of those women. And I've heard really good things, and again, I don't know why I haven't like got around to it again. So I intend to do that. And then last non-fiction, we have This Changes Everything by Naomi Klein. This is actually my dad's book and I borrowed it from him. And although we live in the same house, it's sat on my TBR shelf for like a couple of years now. So I feel like I need to read it and give it back to him. This is about capitalism and climate change and how those two things are linked and like what we as a society should be doing, could be doing, and how it, you know, affects us on the whole, because obviously it does. I have always had an interest in reading this, but recently I've got more into listening to people talk about like climate change and nature and stuff. It's always been an important topic, something that frustrates me when people don't care about it. But I've, yeah, definitely got more into like actively engaging with that kind of content. So I feel like this is another way to do that. And yeah, I'm interested. Next up, we have a little section by itself that's just 2 books, which is my young adult section / my Morgan Matson section, because they're both Morgan Matson books. We have Save the Date and Second Chance Summer. These, I think, are like 2 of the last young adult books on my TBR shelf. I have just like grown out of young adult, which makes sense because I'm nearly 30. And although I do still occasionally read young adult and enjoy young adult, it doesn't hit the same as it used to, obviously. And these, yeah, have been sat on my shelves for ages. I keep meaning to like reread the Morgan Matson I've already read and then read these. But I keep just not doing that, which is silly because I really like Morgan Matson. Morgan Matson is my favourite young adult author, or she was like when I was a teenager. I read Amy Roger's Epic Detour and absolutely loved it. And then I read a few of her other books and absolutely loved them. I sort of missed out on this one, which was her second like big book. And then at the time when I bought this, this was her latest one. But that will show you how long this has been on my TBR, because this came out in 2018. So I bought it 2018, 2019, and have not got around to reading it, which is awful. So I really want to get to these 2. We have Taylor Edwards, whose family aren't that close, but then they get some life-changing news. I believe it's that her dad is dying, as far as I'm aware. And so they decide to spend like one last summer at the family lake house. And this is just about family, friendships, and I'm guessing a romance in there. Pretty much all her books have a romance somewhere in there, and there's a girl and a guy on the cover. So I think I've put off reading this one because I'm like, it's gonna be sad. And then we have this one, which is about a teenage girl whose older sister is getting married, and she is like, I'm gonna make this wedding go really well. It's my job to make sure it goes off without a hitch, and then inevitably things are gonna go wrong. But yeah, I just feel like I need to read these before I hit 30 to like not fully close the YA chapter of my life, but I'm fully no longer a young adult, so let's put that to bed in a way. In the next section we have our classics. So first up we have Beloved by Toni Morrison. This one, I'm not gonna lie, I'm not entirely sure what it's about. I'm just gonna read off the back, but it sounds quite like a tense, deeply affecting read. It's the mid-1800s and as slavery looks to be coming to an end, Sethe is haunted by the violent trauma it wrought on her former enslaved life at Sweet Home, Kentucky. Her dead baby daughter, whose tombstone bears the single word beloved, returns as a spectre to punish her mother, but also to elicit her love. Told with heart-stopping clarity, melding horror and beauty, Beloved is Toni Morrison's enduring masterpiece. This one, I just keep hearing so much about. It's like a classic, modern classic for a reason. I got this in a book box a few years ago now, so I think my intention is also to try and read a lot of the books I've got in those book boxes that I haven't got around to yet. And I've never read anything, to my knowledge, by Toni Morrison before, and I feel like that's definitely a gap in my reading. So I'm going to get to this one. Then we have I Capture the Castle by Dodie Smith. This one I've always wanted to read. It's like the diary of a young woman, and it's about her family and like their neighbours, and its cover is gorgeous. I don't know much else other than that, but it's a classic that at the time I heard about it, I was like, ooh, and I picked it up, and then I've just never got around to reading it, even though I've had this for years now. Are you noticing a theme? Just books I've had on my TBR for years. So yeah, this is up there, one I want to read. Then we have Jane Eyre by Charlotte Bronte. I love the story of Jane Eyre. I've watched several Jane Eyre adaptations. The Toby Stephens Ruth Wilson adaptation, one of my all-time favourite period drama adaptations, full stop. Have I ever read Jane Eyre? No. Why not? I don't know. I put it on my like yearly TBR of like books I want to read throughout the year, every year for the past like 3 or 4 years. Why have I not read it? I don't know. This is gothic literary about Jane Eyre, who is a governess who goes to work for Mr. Rochester to look after and educate his young ward. And then there are secrets at the house where she ends up working. It's this like gorgeous backdrop of the Yorkshire moors, very atmospheric. Yeah, I've never read it and I don't know why. I guess maybe because I already know the story, but I need to read it. I've read other Bronte stuff. I've read Wuthering Heights by Emily Bronte. I've read Bronte poetry from all the sisters and is it Patrick Branwell? But I've never read Jane Eyre, so I need to get on that. It's like my mum's favourite book as well, and my sister read it and really liked it, so I'm the loose the loose thread here. And lastly, we have Cranford and Other Stories by Elizabeth Gaskell, although I'm mostly focusing on Cranford here. Elizabeth Gaskell I have read from before. I've read North and South by her a few years ago, and I really enjoyed that one. And then I've never read any more Elizabeth Gaskell. I've seen the BBC adaptation of Cranford that came out years ago, and I really enjoyed that. So I'm like, if I want to read more Elizabeth Gaskell, and I know I like just like the general story setup of Cranford, why not read Cranford? Also this year I'm just trying to read more classics in general, so this will help with that. And I bought it end of last year, maybe. So it's another one that's like, it's more recent in my purchases, but also I can't let it sit on my TBR for too long, or it'll become one of those books that I've had for years. Next up, we have a little category of Greek mythology retellings. I've definitely got more into Greek mythology retellings in recent years. I've always been into like Greek mythology from when I was little, then sort of grew out of it and got back into it, and now I'm definitely reading more adaptations of mythology. So we have Clytemnestra by Costanza Casati. This is about Clytemnestra and her marriage and her family, and it's just a retelling. I got this year, and while I'm trying to get better at reading books that have been on my TBR for ages, I'm also trying to get better about reading books as they come in. So I want to read like the really old books from my TBR and then the new books from my TBR, so the new books don't become old books. You get me. So yes, we have Clytemnestra. Then we have Circe by Madeline Miller, which is retelling of the myth of Circe. Would you believe it? This really intrigues me because Circe is like sort of a witchy character, which sounds really cool. I read The Song of Achilles by Madeline Miller a couple of years ago now, really liked it. I've also read the little book she did, which I can't remember the name of now, so that's really going to annoy me. Galatea. And I really liked that as well. But then I've not picked up another Madeline Miller novel since The Song of Achilles. So I need to get on that. Also, my sister's read it, so I want to read it so I can talk to her about it. And this was like a really good charity shop find, so I need to also like get to my charity shop finds. Next we have Electra by Jennifer Saint. I read Ariadne by Jennifer Saint. Really enjoyed Ariadne. Have picked up like 2 more Jennifer Saint since then. Have I read either? No. But this is the story of Electra and Cassandra and Clytemnestra and how their stories like intertwine. Yeah, I just want to read more Jennifer Saint so I don't keep picking up her books and not getting to them. And since I know I enjoyed Ariadne so much, I'm hoping I'll enjoy more of Jennifer Saint. So yeah, got to get to this one. Next, we have some literary fiction. So first up, we have A New York Winter's Tale. This is a romance between a burglar who breaks into this like grand house, and the woman who lives in that house is like a young woman who's dying. So this is gonna be sad. I think I've not picked this up because I'm expecting it to be so sad. Also, it's a chunky guy. However, I have to read this before I turn 30 because I bought this book 10 years ago and I've not read it. What am I doing? I bought this when I was at university in my first year of uni, if it was 10 years ago. Or potentially end of my first year of uni, I think. So if I bought this at university and I don't read it by the time I'm 30, that's ridiculous. It's too much. I've gone too far. But yes, this is a movie tie-in cover, so I can read it and then watch the movie. Because the reason I picked it up in the first place is because I saw a trailer for the movie and I thought that looks really good. I like Jessica Brown Findlay. I like Colin Farrell. I love a romance. So here we go. I just need to read this. It does daunt me, the size, but I'll get over it. Next we have Eleanor Oliphant is Completely Fine. This is about a woman named Eleanor Oliphant, and she is just sort of stuck in like a continuous loop of doing the same thing every day, and is a bit like stuck in a rut in her life, but she seems like okay with it, but then she's like, maybe I'm not. I just heard really good things about it when it came out, so picked it up and then never read it because I'm ridiculous. This has been on my TBR for ages. I just need to get to it, plain and simple. In the same vein, we have The Storied Life of AJ Fikry. This has not been on my TBR as long, in the same vein as like I've not had it since it came out. It was a while before I picked it up. But this is about a grumpy bookshop owner, and then one day he finds this little girl left at his bookshop, and it's just about like them changing each other's lives. It sounds cute. I just need to get to it, otherwise it's going to sit on my shelves for ages. Next, we have The Vanishing Half by Britt Bennett. This is about twins who live in this small southern black community, and then I believe they run away when they're teenagers. And then we see their lives years later, them grown up, and one of them has been passing as white and has this whole life where no one knows that she's actually a black woman because she's passing as a white woman, whereas the other twin is living as a black woman. And so it's just about their identities, how they connect to their racial identities, how they connect to each other, their lives, their family. This got really good reviews when it came out, and I was very interested in reading it. And again, it's just one that I keep meaning to pick up and then not, and I don't know why, so I really need to get to this one. Because like I said, I've heard great things, so why have I not read it yet? Next, we have An American Marriage by Tayari Jones. This is another one I got in a book box, not got around to reading it. This is about young newlyweds who are very happily married, envisioning their futures, and then Roy, our male main character, is imprisoned for a crime he didn't commit and is sentenced to 12 years. And then we see that time pass, and Celeste is trying to almost move on and finds comfort in a friend of theirs. And then Roy's conviction is suddenly overturned, and I'm assuming drama ensues. This one just sounds really interesting to me, and I want to get to it. It's another one that why haven't I picked it up? There's been a few times when I've gone to pick it up and then I picked up something else instead, or I've just not been in the mood to read. So I just need to get to this sooner rather than later. Then we have The Cloisters by Katie Hayes. This is, like Clytemnestra, a newer one I have, which I want to get around to. This is gothic, academic, has tarot in it. This is a woman who thinks she's going to be working at the Metropolitan Museum of Art, but is instead assigned to the Cloisters, which is the Gothic museum. And she meets some interesting characters and gets involved in tarot and divination and stuff. So it sounds really interesting. Another newer one I've got, The Bandit Queens. This I'm just really excited to get to, and I really want to read it sooner rather than later. This is about a woman who everyone thinks has killed her husband, and so she gets reputation around that, and she is fine with letting people think that, if it means that they don't bother her. But then a woman comes to her and is like, you killed your husband, can you help me kill mine? And that just sounds really intriguing to me. The cover is so punchy. I was just immediately drawn to it when I first saw it, and yeah, I really want to get to this one. Then we have The Paper Palace by Miranda Cowley Heller. This is one that doesn't necessarily sound like a me kind of book. It's about a woman who is on a family holiday, and then one night has an affair, passionate encounter. This really intrigues me because it says it's set in 24 hours, but you also get the 50 years of backstory leading up to the woman having that encounter, that affair, that moment. Affairs, cheating, not normally something I'm drawn to, but this just sounds very intriguing. And I've heard very good things, so I wanted to give it a go. And then we have Happy Hour by Marlo Granados. This just appealed to me because I love books about women in their 20s who just sort of have messy lives. And this is, I think, about two friends who throughout the day are trying to earn money, just trying to make a wage to live. But at night they're going out to all these glitzy, arty events and almost like leading double lives, and that sounded intriguing to me. Also, I feel like I need to read the books about messy 20 whatever year olds while I'm still clinging to my 20s before I go, I'm too old for this. But yes, so that's why I want to get to this one. Then we have some fantasy sci-fi to finish us off. So first up we have The Left Hand of Darkness by Ursula K. Le Guin. This I picked up for my book club that I used to have, like an in-person feminist book club. This one is one that I picked up for the book club but then just never got around to reading, which is frustrating. So I want to read it because I want to have read all the books that my book club decided to read. And again, this is like held up as like one of the pinnacle of like sci-fi fantasy. I've never read any Ursula K. Le Guin, and that really feels like a gap in my reading, so that's another reason I want to get to this. Yeah, it's just one that's been sat on my TBR shelf that I really feel like I should have read by now, so that's why it's on my list. Then another book club book that I never got around to reading. I think this was actually when I was in hospital. We were supposed to be reading it, so that might be why I never did. But that's The Fifth Season by N.K. Jemisin. This is like end of the world, dystopian, sci-fi fantasy kind of vibes. I've never read any N.K. Jemisin and I really feel like I should have, so again, I just want to get to this because it feels like a gap in my reading. Then we have Places in the Darkness by Chris Brookmyre. This is sci-fi set in space, but with like a detective twist, because they're on a space station and someone dies and there's a body that is found. And that just really intrigues me. I love the idea of like a closed setting where like a murder happens and so you've only got a certain amount of suspects who it could be. But this just sounded really intriguing. I bought it when I saw it because it sounded so intriguing, and again, it's just sat on my TBR for ages. I've not read much sci-fi recently and I really want to get back into that, so I thought if I read this in the next year, that will make me happy. Last few books, we have The Priory of the Orange Tree by Samantha Shannon. I think I've not read this because it's so chunky, but again, it's been sat on my shelf for a few years now. Every year I put it on my TBR and I've not got round to it. This is political fantasy with badass women and dragons, and why have I not read that? So yeah, this is another one I really want to get to. Then another chunky fantasy, we have The Name of the Wind by Patrick Rothfuss. This is about a guy called Kvothe, and it's just, I think, him telling stories of his life, which, I don't know, I've heard good things about it. I know that Patrick Rothfuss is taking forever to write like the next one. This is the first one. There's a second one definitely out. I don't know about the third one or if that's the one that people are waiting on. But again, I bought this like 10 years ago, so I really need to get around to it. So yeah, that's why I want to read that before I'm 30. Then we have The Bone Season, also by Samantha Shannon. This is one I bought this year and so want to get round to while I'm like hyped for it. This is again like political, but I think more like futuristic. Yeah, 2059 this is set in, and our main character has abilities that are dangerous to have in this society. This is the author's preferred text. She rewrote it, they re-released it, new covers, slight changes to the writing and the story. Yeah, so I want to get around to that. Then last of all, we have The Adventures of Amina Al-Sarafi by Shannon Chakraborty. This is about a retired lady pirate who gets drawn back into pirating because of a kidnapping. This just sounded really cool to me. Again, I bought it this year, so it's one I want to get round to while I'm still excited about it. I love pirate stories, so I want to pick up more of that kind of thing. And yeah, that's the last book I want to read before I turn 30. I'm realising now how many like chunky books I have on this TBR, and I don't tend to read chunky books, so I've really shot myself in the foot here. But that is it. Those are all the 30 books. I would attempt to hold them all up on camera right now, but they're all over my bed, so I won't do that. Are you turning 30 anytime soon? Do you have a list like this? If you're not turning 30 yet, are you gonna do this in the future? Let me know in the comments below, and I will see you soon with another video. And I promise that in a year's time, if I'm still making videos, I will look back at this and see if I accomplished these. We'll see. Thanks for watching. Bye.